have Sam once again, who supports Chelsea. That's an important thing about this episode. He supports Chelsea. We have Sam. I swear to God, if you don't say hello.
He's not here.
He did this last time, pretty much. He did this last time.
That's what Chris did. Do you do music? No?
That is very true.
So Sam supports Chelsea. I support Chelsea. We have James, who supports West Ham.
Yeah,
Are you
I
having
am
a
actually
fucking
here.
laugh? Yeah, good. And then Chris, who supports fucking Millwall.
No.
Jesus. And then we'll have Taylor join in at some point, who also supports Chelsea. So this episode is about the Super League, which is actually now kind of dead. So we have James, who is going to explain. Do you want to do it brief or in detail? Fuck it, let's do.
What is it
detail.
you want me to explain?
Just explain what the
giving
Super League is.
So essentially, the European Super League was an idea for a new competition proposed by some of the top 12 football clubs across England, Italy, and Spain. This competition caused controversy for several reasons. So, for starters, it would be first of all, competition with 20 teams across Europe. Now, this league, for the majority of it, would consist of 15 founding members. Those founding members would be immune from any kind of relegation, which is one of the big things that people did not like at all. They did not like that it was a very closed competition. They did say that there would be a remaining 5 places, of which would be open to teams based on their performances in the domestic season. And that, again, although it has left a little bit of it open, has still caused a lot of controversy because a lot of people don't like the fact that there are still teams in there that, regardless of how poorly they've done or how much worse they did than the other 5, they would still be in that league. So that is a huge, huge talking point. Another bit that was very controversial about this was very few people within even the clubs that were involved in this were told. We've had the managers and players of most, if not all of these clubs, basically turn around and saying, well, the first we've known about it is when people like you and I have known about it. They've absolutely basically been kept in the dark with it for a very, very long.
Including sporting director of AC Milan.
It's a fucking shambles.
Which is...
Paolo Maldini, the sporting director of AC Milan, has recently come out and said that he had no idea that this was going to happen. And of course, this has caused a huge backlash, not only from these managers and players within their own clubs, but of course with the fans as well. And that is essentially what the Super League, the Super League was about.
Right, I do just have to quickly make a point here.
Oh God!
For anyone that might have noticed lag there, we are recording from home, so there is probably going to be a bit of delay and lag.
What the fuck?
What? No, there was a bit of lag there, so I have to just make that known that we're recording.
Is he not meant to clarify?
No, but like we're recording from home as if we were recording in the bins outside. Yeah.
Well, what do you mean? We're in a professional studio, isn't it?
I was recording.
We're not exactly in a professional studio, but we are recording from home, so there's probably going to be a bit of lag here and there.
No, see, I was recording from some Skip Hire. Shout out some Skip Hire.
Sake, man, no, that's old. That is fucking old.
Sorry for
the fan base of the Cypnos fan base don't know about some Skip Hire.
And they never will, thank God. So, James, this isn't the first time that the Super League has been a thing, is it? Or been like a threat?
No, for quite a long time now, there have been sort of rumours sort of bandied around and sort of vague ideas, none of which have really come to sort of form anything sort of solid about it or really sort of gone into motion. It's sort of...
Just to interrupt quick, they said it had been planned for 20 plus years.
Fucking hell.
Yeah.
Well,
older than us.
Older than us. When it was planned or when people were saying that was sort of when we first became risk of that with the Premier League? Because from what I've heard, the plans for this exact competition that's just been proposed. Now, there may have been other similar competitions going back that far, but for this exact exact Super League that was threatening to come to play has been in the making for 3 years. Plans for this exact tournament have been
Yeah, it's probably just in the
originated
making.
3 years
Apparently,
ago.
they started actually talking about it 20 years ago. Apparently, is when they've been talking about it and trying to do something,
Well, now.
or at least
Again,
that's Madrid. At least.
Again, I think this is sort of just this kind of idea in general. I
Mm.
think for this exact competition that we know as the Super League, which has come out in the last couple of days, has been a format that's been planned for the last 3 years, and of course has come crumbling down in the last 3 days, which obviously is rather embarrassing for a lot
It
of
was
the clubs
announced 2
involved.
days ago, and it was announced 3 days ago, and then was closed down officially 1 day ago, kind of thing. So
Yeah.
it all
Literally
crumbled
last
within
night.
2 days.
Yeah.
And credit for that has got to go to pretty much everyone within the footballing community, other than obviously these few individuals who are planning it, because I certainly can't think of any other point where fans of pretty much every single football club, and managers and players have all been so united in one common cause on such a mass scale. It really is quite incredible. And to be honest, I think it probably will be one of the, if not the biggest, footballing event in our lifetime that we will have
It's
witnessed.
a very wholesome experience to see that, really.
It
Yeah,
is.
very rare
Yeah,
you see
it's,
so many rivals come together and agree. to
I
something.
know. So I would
The
hug you
exact same thing.
if I could see you. And you're a Chelsea fan.
Millwall fans, West Ham fans, all completely different clubs, completely different recent histories,
Yeah,
and
still
all of
coming
them
together.
agreed the exact same thing.
Yeah, literally, it's
Yeah.
an attack on our history and heritage, really, and our culture.
Exactly.
And I
Like,
won't
you can make
fucking
as
stand
many
for it.
Chelsea has no history jokes as you like, kind of thing. It goes against whatever history we do have.
Yeah, exactly.
But the thing is, to be honest, I think regardless, I mean, you use Chelsea as an example there. I don't necessarily think that this was about people talking about their own club's history. This was footballing history and
It was
football
about
tradition.
Yeah,
football
this is
altogether.
it-
Yeah, no, it was
English
football
history,
altogether.
yeah.
I'm just saying
Yeah,
went against the actual clubs as well. Especially from
Yeah,
us or
exactly.
City, we're stopping what happened to us happen to any other club.
Yeah, like
No other
if
club can grow and blow up like we did
this went
because
through,
it's such
Exactly.
a close competition.
yeah, literally.
Which
If
makes
this
it
went
very
through,
hypocritical.
Sam, he's a fucking interrupted me.
That is Sam in a
Like,
nutshell.
What?
Okay. I just want to say one thing. If this went through, right, like the entire football pyramid wouldn't have been the same because you have no big six without the actual big six. And I'm sorry, but like I'm not going to accept like the new fucking Brighton or Sheffield Wednesday as a big six anymore. Like it's just not the same as like hearing on Liverpool versus Man City. It's just not the
Top
same.
two faced off. Sheffield United
Well,
versus
this is-
West Brom.
Or Burnley, even Burnley have made a shocking turn of events to the final.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, you say that about the football pyramid. You're right; it wouldn't be the same. But I think the concern for a lot of people is that the football pyramid wouldn't be able to afford to exist anymore. The money and the revenue that these clubs bring into their domestic side. I mean, there was a lot of concern about what would happen to grassroots and youth football because obviously those leagues rely heavily on people higher up in the pyramid and that basically letting that money trickle down to help fund that. The smaller clubs within the Premier League themselves, again, they've got a certain reliance on the income that these top six clubs bring into the Premier League to survive as well. I think one of the ones we've seen recently before this all kicked off was Bury FC. I know they're not in the Premier League, but they recently went into administration, and of course with COVID and everything as well, in the lower leagues, a lot of these parachute payments were needed to essentially keep these clubs alive, and that was really about, I think it was League Two. They got, I can't remember if it was League One and League Two, or I think it might have just been League Two, and they got a payment of 30 million quid, which was essentially just 1.5 million for each club, which for these big six sides is absolutely peanuts, but of course means
Pennies,
such a huge amount to these smaller sides. And that was what was under threat with this whole Super League thing and why so many people, I think, were against it.
Yeah, literally, the economy would like collapse on itself, and it'd be over.
Which is another reason why the government was so keen on stepping in, because it would damage the overall country's economy, not just a couple of football clubs.
Fun fact.
And that's
Sorry to interrupt again.
no, you go, Chris.
Yeah. The Super League lasted longer than my respect for Boris did. And that's it all. I've got my kebabs. So
I can relate to that.
Well, it's funny you should mention that because the BBC have published an article earlier today, essentially listing 5 things that managed to last longer than the European Super League.
I think I saw them tweet out
included
about
in that. Yeah, so included in that was the Suez Canal blockage that we've had recently. That lasted longer than the Super League. You had Jeremy Collins on I'm a Celebrity. She went in there for 3 days before deciding to quit. Still lasted longer than that program than the European Super League did. Chances are the milk that we've all got in our fridges have lasted longer than the European Super League. We know that milk tends not to last too long compared to the other things there. But turns out it does actually have the ability to last longer in a cup than people like Man United, Manchester City, Real Madrid and Barcelona. Chris, you mentioned earlier you were ordering a kebab which might arrive halfway through this. Well, chances are if you ate a burger at the beginning when this all kicked off, the digestion process would have lasted in the European Super League. And even more likely to have lasted longer than that was Britney Spears' marriage. It only lasted 55 hours before it was annulled. Yeah, only lasted 55 hours before it was annulled, but it still lasted longer than the marriage between the top 12 clubs in Europe in this proposed Super League. So there you go. It really did not last long at all.
But both were brutal divorces, to be fair to them. So, they're both brutal divorces.
No, to be fair to you, fair play. It wasn't a good divorce.
No.
Well,
that's a good thing, obviously.
I don't know of many divorces that are good.
Well,
The idea is you're breaking from someone that you probably didn't like, so you divorced them.
No, because
Well,
a lot
the
of the time
funny
it
thing-
can just be like drifting apart, and it's literally just.
Well, the exact quote from the publicity team when it happened was they said that it was a joke that had gone too far, which I think actually sums up this whole European Super League thing pretty well. I know they're being serious about it, but this was an idea that essentially spiraled way out of control.
they're all a bunch of
and
fucking
caused got
clowns.
Oh, they are.
Oh, yeah.
Totally. How these people could come out and say they had no idea the fans would react so aggressively to this either means that A, they're just complete liars, just care about the money, or B, they are just so ignorant of what the culture's like that they're really not fit to be involved in the game. And I'm pretty convinced that it is a mixture of both.
Yeah, I was just about to say, unfortunately, I do think it's both, mate.
Yeah. Glazers out, Lever out, fucking every shit owner out. Fucking kick them out of this country. I don't care. Like, Sorry.
Well, Ed Woodward, who was the Man United vice, technically still is the Man United vice chairman. He was one of the huge advocates for this, was heavily involved in forming it. It's been announced that he's going to be stepping down from his role at Man United at the end of the season.
Fucking good.
End of the year, calendar year, they said.
Yeah, there are talks of possibly forcing certain individuals as part of potential sanctions out of these clubs, which would obviously satisfy that demand for punishing the individuals and not the clubs as a whole, for fear of upsetting the fans that have been, I think, quite remarkable in this.
They say,
and have really just saved the game of football. Sorry, Sam, you were going to say.
Yeah, no, sorry, I was going to interrupt. That's my bad, you continue. No, they were saying they're going to kick or get Bruce Buck to resign from some kind of Premier League committee as well. He's obviously our chairman kind of thing. Because they were saying it's all done by our board, and I would probably guess City's as well, rather than the owners necessarily. Yeah, they're saying he could resign from that. Everyone's leaving apart from the people within City and us, though.
Well, this is the thing, and of course, obviously, as a result of it, on the law surrounding football ownerships, we may get to a point where actually clubs and individuals who make these kind of decisions don't have that choice anymore. By the letter of the law, they may have to go, regardless of what anyone else thinks. So it's really a lot of uncertainty now around these basically chairman and vice chairman and owners and etc. depending on who's involved in which club.
That's why I think you need fan majority to be the main power of what goes in the main power say. Because without that, exactly, without that, you've just seen what's happened. It's caused an absolute shit show in our country because the fans didn't have enough power to stand up against the chairman and these clubs, and they thought they were bigger than the league in the country. That's just not on, Well,
this is the thing, and it goes back a little bit to what I mentioned earlier about how a lot of these people weren't aware as to the effect and what people's opinion on this is going to be. And I think that what's happened is they're looking at this and they're thinking, well, I own the club, I control the finances. Officially, I'm the big boss, and have completely underestimated the power of the fans. And actually, this is a wake-up call, I think, not only for our league, but for world football. No one within a club, no matter what your title is or how much you get paid by them, no one within a club is bigger than the club itself. And that is essentially what we have learned from this and what the fans have demonstrated, because the fans for a lot of these clubs, officially, they don't control a lot of the money. Officially, they don't hold a lot of stature or power, as was demonstrated by the fact that they weren't even consulted when their clubs entered the European Super League. And it's the pressure, not just from them, but a huge amount of pressure from these fan groups and fans protesting out of places like Stamford Bridge and Elland Road that have essentially forced these people to back out of the ideas. And this is something that is always going to have to remain in the back minds of people whenever they try to make decisions like this in the future, because money talks and money is powerful, but it's not the be all and end all when it comes to these football clubs.
Literally.
Right. I just want to say something here. I've been looking at Instagram comments and people's reactions to it, and I've got quite an interesting one here. I must ask that you wait for me to finish the question, because I know that you'll probably want to say something halfway through. So it says here, it's part of the evolution. Football is always changing, but money has always spoken. The Premier League was formulated the same way once upon a time. I just fear for the lower league clubs. Thoughts on that?
Fucking prick.
I think that is... I can understand there is people feeling that there is a slight hypocrisy in this, in the sense that the Premier League was essentially formed by breakaway clubs, essentially sticking two fingers up at what was then known as the old First Division. Of course, the difference with this is the Premier League was always intended to be an open competition. Obviously, you'd have certain clubs starting in its inaugural season, but every club in English football had the opportunity to work their way up to the top into this Premier League.
And anyone could leave for relegation.
Yeah, and compete with the top teams. And like you say, Sam, there is still that element of jeopardy about it and equality. And of course, it was always intended to remain part of the footballing pyramid. And I think it seems a lot more certain that even though it was quite disrespectful in the views of some people to the Football Association in this country, there was still, I think, a bit more confidence that money would be invested back into the lower leagues and grassroots football, and there was less fear within these communities that rely upon these football clubs that their income was going to stop and jobs and things would be at risk. So it is easy to turn around and say, well, you can't have a go because you did this 30 odd years ago. But the more you look at it, the more differences that emerge, in my opinion. And it is still remaining within the spirit of the game that we all know and love. I don't know what the rest of you lot think, but personally, I don't think you can compare it so easily.
No, I think the same. Like as you said, Premier League is an open competition. Anyone can make it. Anyone can get out of it. Whereas with the Super League, it was just reserved for those clubs. And the ones who did the shittest and like got bombed, they wouldn't even get demoted. They just stay in it next year and do it again. So like, if you think about it, like this season's Arsenal, right? If they got in, they would have lost every single game possible. But is there any like punishment? No, they're just at the bottom of the table when
No.
they start again next season. It's
And this is a thing you could quite easily, quite an easy scenario could be. You get Arsenal competing, who at the moment are ninth in the domestic league.
they're abysmal.
They got a draw against Fulham, who are currently in the relegation zone, looking like they're going to go down with these plans for an out. So you could essentially have them playing in this Super League, losing every week in, week out, and you've got a team like, I don't know, for argument's sake, let's say Leicester, who have earned their way into that league on merit, who could have finished, sort of 5, 6, however many places above them, and actually done pretty well for themselves. But because most of these clubs are protected, they still would have gone down.
Literally.
If they hadn't performed domestically as well as in the European competition.
Someone like Arsenal would stay up despite finishing so dead last, and they'd
It's
still
stupid.
be making billions.
It's stupid.
Yeah. And what I don't know exactly how this would work. I'm assuming what would happen. Again, you look at a club like Arsenal, who at the moment are only playing in one league, and they're ninth in it. Now, let's say you put in a second league on top of that, where they would, i.e. the European Super League, where they'd probably be playing their stronger players, be midweeks, you're essentially doubling the amount of games they've got to play. Let's say, for argument's sake, Arsenal got relegated from the Premier League. What you're essentially looking at there is a second division side competing with what is meant to be Europe's elite and one of the 20 top teams in the world. That's not right on every level.
Right.
Whereas you've got teams like Leicester and West Ham at the moment who are you've got teams like Leicester and West Ham at the moment who, as it stands, I believe are in the top 5 of the English Premier League, who would find it very, very difficult to break into what would be Europe's elite when actually you look at the numbers and the figures as things currently stand. Those two clubs have got a much stronger argument to say that they come into that bracket than a team like Arsenal. I don't want to sound too harsh on Arsenal. I'm just using them as an example.
Yeah, literally.
But
Although they are shit.
yeah,
The comments are going to be interesting.
Yeah, but the concept applies to any club you want to use. It doesn't have to be the ones that I've mentioned, but the concept remains the same, doesn't it?
Right, so UEFA, in reaction to this announcement, said that all the clubs involved would be banned from competing in certain other tournaments. What were the tournaments? It was the FA Cup and then the Champions
World
League,
Cup,
wasn't it?
Euros.
Yeah.
Well, if it was a UEFA statement, then they would have been banning them from the Champions League and the Europa League.
Yeah.
And this possible conference league that may start. It was then the other football associations within their own countries who basically followed in the footsteps of UEFA and said, if you do this, we'll also ban you from our competitions as well.
So it was essentially they'd just been playing in the Super League and no other tournament at all.
And that would have killed them.
Yeah, so with everything put together, the threat was that, if you want to play in this Super League, you play in the Super League, but that will essentially, as you say, be the only tournament that you can compete in, was the threat to the clubs.
So
and then, of course, you had UEFA and FIFA.
Sorry to interrupt quick. Taylor's just come online on Xbox, so I assume he'll be joining.
Okay.
Cool.
So what would the impact of basically just being in one single league be? Like the economic side, the fans, the actual clubs themselves?
Oh, it would be catastrophic. I think we've already mentioned what the effect would be on the other clubs in the footballing pyramid that aren't these clubs. But you look at sort of the fan bases of a lot of these clubs as well. I know that there's a lot of money for TV rights, but you can guarantee they would be for subscription channels. You've got people whose teams are going to be playing further across Europe, so
They were saying
people are going to
some
have to be.
Arab countries. Potentially,
Yeah, that's
which
for
is
the
really
TV
weird
rights,
considering it was
yeah.
meant to be a European tournament.
But they're the ones paying the money, though, aren't they? So
Yep.
they're going to pay the big bucks for the TV rights. Of course, the clubs themselves will be playing away games all across Europe on a very regular basis. So for the fans that would usually attend the games, who are already struggling to afford to go to see their team, are essentially going to be priced out of the game for a lot of people. And a lot of people, although they were offering to get money from investors and stuff, a lot of people will stop watching and supporting their clubs financially. And, that would have a huge impact on those clubs. And of course, to be honest, I think they are taking a bit of a gamble with the fact that, or by saying that, they're still going to make that money and make more money with what they're going to be receiving from these TV rights from across the world. So, yeah, the whole game essentially was put in jeopardy by these plans, in my opinion. And it's an absolute disgrace and just really irresponsible.
Okay. We're gonna bring Taylor in. So Taylor is a Chelsea fan
Scumbag.
like me and Sam. Oh, we might be starting an argument.
Chelsea scum! And a bunch of racists too. Wait, what?
You getting in the ring then?
Oh yeah.
My granddad was a Millwall fan, so I'll back Chrissy.
Yeah, let's go.
So now
How are you,
Taylor's here.
Lions?
So Taylor, we were just discussing about UEFA and FIFA and all that and their responses to the league. Now I've just seen on Google from a day ago, I don't know if you guys have seen this,
Maybe.
Madrid court bans UEFA and FIFA for moves against Breakaway League. In its ruling, the court expressly banned UEFA and FIFA from taking any measure or action or statement or announcement that directly or indirectly impedes the implementation of the Super League.
I lost you about 2 words in.
So basically, a Madrid court has ruled that they basically can't take the action that they wanted to.
Yeah, you can't stop them forming it, but you can stop them being part of other ones. Therefore, that would probably stop them.
They couldn't even
Well,
join the
I
first
think
place.
I think the exact ruling from that Madrid court was that the footballing bodies in Spain shouldn't impose, or by law wouldn't be allowed to impose sanctions until a full review and impacts and everything of the Super League had been assessed. So essentially, from what it sounds like, this is basically a knee-jerk reaction from the court, or they're viewing this as a knee-jerk reaction from the league saying, oh, well, you've done this, so we're going to do this. And they hadn't felt that enough details had been released for them to sort of conduct a full review of what these effects were going to be and basically the ins and outs of everything. So that basically what they were accusing these football associations of jumping the gun.
In a reverse card.
Basically, yeah. So as of now,
so
they weren't banning them.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they weren't banning them from making sanctions full stop, but they were saying you can't make these threats so early on because you don't have the full picture.
So you can do it, but after a certain time.
Yeah, that is understandable. That makes sense, but
after all the information has been released, essentially, is what they were saying.
So as of now, on the 21st of April, all of the 6 Premier League teams that originally formed it have now withdrawn. Did you see it happening this quickly?
Yes. 100%. Did you see the? Sorry to interrupt, but did you see the amount of backlash on every social media post, like Facebook, Insta, Twitter?
Yeah.
Like it was 100% happening quickly, in my opinion. But I never would have thought it would take 2 days after the announcement.
Yeah, but the thing is, it wasn't even just the fans. So like, people like Gary Neville speaking out on Sky. You have the entirety of Sky covering it. Like all the Carragher as well. All the big figures, all the pundits on Twitter were just going off on one about it because they were all absolutely disgusted by their behaviour. I think with that, they then rallied the fans even more. So practically the entirety of social media just spoke out, and like the protest and stuff as well. Like it's like in person, and like with the coverage Sky has, obviously like the boards they got that message really quickly. I think so. I think it was kind of expected to be a quick withdrawal. To be honest.
Mm.
Yeah, as you were
I
saying,
think-
us and City in particular were looking to back out even before the protest. They were saying because of the media response alone, that's what got to them. And then it was
Yeah,
like,
I heard that they
hang on
were
all the
planning
fans as
from.
well.
I heard they were planning from the morning of that day, even.
Literally,
Right,
it
and
was
then
think-
that was one.
diabolical.
I wasn't expecting essentially for it to collapse as quickly. I think what would have happened was because these people were so money driven and they, despite sort of the negative reaction, they could still make a profit from it.
Mhm.
And essentially, I think these people were basically aware that they probably would have to make concessions and compromises, but once they dragged it through the courts and things, they would still be able to get a form of what they were asking for, even if it's not exactly what they'd laid out. Now, what they didn't see coming and didn't predict, which I don't think any of us did, was
the
that
protest.
something in football, which has never ever happened before, is that every single person involved was speaking out in unity against this one cause, which has
Yeah.
never been done
Yeah.
in the world, not until the very sort of early conception of football, when you had very few people involved in it, and it was. But now it's a global game, and you've essentially got the fan base of a 4 billion fan sport
They were saying 4 billion plus
against
is
these
what Perez
companies.
said, and he was the guy doing it.
Yeah, fuck Perez, by the way.
Yeah.
Just want to say that.
Yeah,
Fuck
and
Perez.
and this idiot has basically said, as part of his justifications for it, he's saying, young fans are getting sort of becoming disengaged with the game and losing interest in it. Well, frankly, we've got 4 people on this chat who are between the ages of 19 and 20. We've all been against it. I work in a school full of kids, and every single child that I've spoken to about it is totally against it.
Wow.
So it's quite obvious that this bloke's just an out and out liar trying to get money out of it, which is what they all were.
So it's all ended now, sort of. Well, it started to end. So given that it's taken 2 days, do you think the damage has been dealt? How much damage? And are we going to be able to recover from this in like how long time? Or how much time?
I would like to make a point on this one. I think, like, if you're talking about damage as to what the European Super League has done to our leagues,
Yeah.
I don't think too much because like R6 have withdrawn. So I think that repercussion there is kind of like solved itself. However, I think it's more of like a system shock to like every fan in England, really. Like like this could have like ruined football as we know it. I think with that, it's an immediate wake up call to just there needs to be change like to stop this from ever happening again. Really, so I think it'll take time to recover that, and then obviously like get an agreement as to what needs to be done to stop that from happening again. But I don't think it's caused too much of damage to us. That is, I think, anyways.
Yeah, I think
I
it
agree
happened too quick for anything to happen, damage-wise.
Yeah, I agree with you too. I think we will see huge impacts and ripples of this, but I don't think damage is the right word. These were mostly just sort of proposals and plans which were never put into place.
Yeah.
I think it is unlikely that the top 6, regardless of, rightly or wrongly, I think they will face minimal sanctions. Individuals might face bigger ones, but as clubs, they'll face minimal sanctions. And we will, in some way, shape or form, see a change in the law and how clubs are owned. I would be very surprised if they didn't. And I would be in huge favour of some kind of independent body being put in place to regulate these clubs.
100%.
Yeah. So we will see huge changes in the game. But, I think it'll be for the better, or hope it'll be for the better anyway.
Yeah.
Hoping that 50+1
Instead of
Yeah, because I like to
damages.
say it's a lot of damage is wrong, but I'd say shock value is the word for this. Like
The
just a high amount of
impact.
shock value. Yeah,
On
big
the
impact,
damage
no damage.
No, it's not damaged anything yet because it didn't
Yeah,
happen.
it's just a high impact, and it's just a big wake up call for the entire
so
country.
perhaps not the damage that did, but the damage it would have done if it went ahead.
Yes, it would have been horrendous. The fallout of it if it went through.
So in the
I think-
last, go on, James.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I think you just have to look at the reaction of everyone involved in football to just see how catastrophic this would have been.
I mean,
You know?
the scenes speak for themselves.
Yeah, the numbers, essentially paint that picture for us.
Yeah. So in the last 2 hours, I mean, it says 2 hours ago, it might have been before. It says here, Manchester United and Liverpool owners apologised for the Super League proposal. Do you think that they had any need to apologise, considering like teams like Chelsea were borderline forced into it? So do they really have any need to apologise for it?
Yeah.
Well,
Clubs
I
like
would still love an apology.
Yeah.
in my opinion,
Don't know if
Go
that
on, Chris.
exists
Actually,
one, but
you go.
Okay. I was going to say, I think clubs like City and Chelsea do have to apologise for it because, some people may turn around and say they weren't as bad as some of the other clubs involved. And, possibly, but the point is they still had the choice and the power to turn it down. And they, frankly, I don't wish to have a go at some of the people on here, but frankly, those clubs were spineless and put the world game in jeopardy.
Yeah, whether it was their
people have
fault
said-
directly or not, they should still be held responsible for the part they did take.
Yeah.
Well, this is the thing, and people just to use the Chelsea example. At the moment, people are going around saying that Roman Abramovich was quite apprehensive about the idea and wasn't too keen on it. Which, okay, fair enough. But the point,
sorry,
yeah. But the point is, he's the owner of that club, and he still had the final say as to whether Chelsea joined the Super League or not. And he's turned around and made a decision that he's too worried about Chelsea being left behind if a potential Super League has been formed, and has jumped on the bandwagon with the rest of them. Now, is he as bad as some of these people in the Italian football we've seen at Juventus and Edward at United? In my opinion, no. But that doesn't mean that they did the right thing or that what they did was necessarily forgivable, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So yes, I do think that individuals like that do still need to face sanctions and be taught that they're not bigger than the game and they still have to respect everyone within it.
Precisely.
Sam, you got any words on it?
Not really, no. I just think the
Okay.
people who arranged it should 100% be held responsible for it. Whether that's the owners, whether that's the board members, whoever it is, they should be held responsible.
I think people like Perez and the other billionaires that like made this happen should face different consequences to the clubs, maybe.
I fully push that.
Well, there have been some rumours, and again, I don't know how much truth are in this, but there are some rumours that UEFA are saying that Real Madrid will never be allowed to compete in the Champions or Europa League ever again for as long as Perez is at the club.
I heard about that.
Now, again, I don't know. Yeah, and again, I don't know how much truth is in that. So this may just be some kind of sort of Twitter sort of rumour being spread about. But I think it just goes to show the magnitude that the most successful club in that competition could potentially be banned from it for an undetermined period of time.
So we have here an article from 1 hour ago from the Daily Mail. View from Italy: collapse of the Super League risks killing Italian football.
Bollocks.
Bollocks. Hang on, let
It saved it.
Well, it's their own fault.
It saved it.
It's their own fault. And I'm sorry, the Italian FA have already announced that they're not going to be basically imposing sanctions on these three Italian clubs. And whether you like it or not, these three clubs, Juventus, Inter Milan and AC Milan, are three of the biggest clubs in world football. Now, if they can get their asses in gear and get their act together, then they can introduce a system similar to ours, which has made ours one of, if not the most successful in the world, where the money is distributed differently to create a more sustainable and stronger economy within the game. And that is why these clubs in Italy and Spain have been the founders of these projects, and the ones in England have jumped on the bandwagon, because England hasn't felt the need financially to form this league. You know, and you've got clubs like Real Madrid and Barcelona who are spending millions upon millions of years on transfers, you know, and frankly, they've got themselves in this debt. You know, if you don't have the money to spend on players or whatever it is you're buying, you shouldn't be spending it.
Yeah.
Precisely.
So essentially, what they've done is they've basically dug themselves a hole and they're falling in it, and they're prepared to drag the rest of football down with it just to clear their own debt.
Mm-hmm.
It's stupid. And also, one thing that I would like to point out as well is that if the Super League went through as well, because like they said, like they would distribute like 3.5 billion to teams. I'm pretty sure, like in just terms like like just
They were
money
expecting
like for the
roughly
season.
that amount.
4 billion.
300
Yeah, just-
billion each
yeah.
when the tournament kicked off. It says here.
Exactly. Just think of like the inflation in player wages if that like went through, like because they'd be playing like huge, ridiculous
they
sums
were
of
going to
players.
cap them. They said they were going to cap
Yeah, I
the
suppose that's
wages.
why they would.
But I say
But-
cap them in like every league possible because it's getting out of hand. Like with the wages, like fucking
stopping other players joining other
Yeah, and,
clubs.
like-
Say,
and, like-
say a Leicester wanted, like they're up there with the best teams. They're top 3 clubs in the country, going off the league table as it is, kind of thing. They probably should have got Champions League last season, but based off
Yeah.
a pure financial perspective, they can't afford to compete.
Yeah, we're good players because like some are demanding sums of like 500,000 a week. That is like a laughable figure. Like if you asked for that like 10 years ago, they just laugh at your face and tell you to fuck off. Like something like pretentious,
Well, this
Like-
is the thing. With almost every other industry in the world and business, when your income falls, you cut costs. So that means you start lowering people's wages, you make redundancies and things like that.
Hmm.
If where I worked, they were sort of had less money and they needed to, they would cut my wages down and I would be on less money.
Mm.
And that's what they should have been doing in football. When these people are getting into debt and getting less income, they should have been reducing people's wages, not just the players, but the players, I think, are the ones that get in the spotlight because they arguably get paid the most for what people perceive to be as less work.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I agree with that.
No,
but that's
no,
what's
there's a
perceived,
lot of
and that's
effort and like time that goes in training and playing like like day in day out. Don't get me wrong. It's just
Yeah.
Quite a lot of
Yeah,
sacrifices too.
It's the one that's highlighted in the media, isn't it?
Yeah.
And these people weren't prepared to sort of cut these wages down, and sort of make short-term losses for long-term gains. They saw
And it's cost them.
the money coming in. Yeah, and it's cost them, and rightly so.
They deserve it. It's
Right, so-
it's stupid.
Yeah.
It's just
I would-
just basic like business management which they've messed up completely.
Yeah, too much player power. I think a salary cap would really help. The most recent salary cap breach, I think, off the top of my head, was Saracens, and they got fined a mega load and relegated
Yeah.
two in the same season.
It's
which is
just
mad to
like
think.
you know what I mean? It just prevents like smaller clubs from making like like a brilliant like story like for their new season. Like for Leicester, for example, came out of nowhere to win the Premier League back in the day, and that was like such an amazing like event to win. This really, if you think about it. But like if the wages like that they're asking of like nowadays, if they had that back then, like even 5 years back, like you probably wouldn't have some. They probably wouldn't have had that winning team, just because of like they would have been asking for too much, and they just wouldn't be able to financially like support it because they were a smaller club.
Yeah, exactly. And you look at places, the other clubs across the world. I mean, the ones that have come up a lot recently, or not recently, but the ones that have come a lot with this events that have unfolded are the German and French sides. I mean, you look at Paris Saint-Germain; they are a prime example of how you can maintain a strong financial structure within the game and still have ways of making the money to spend on big players. I mean, Neymar, he went there for around about 200 million.
It's
and
ridiculous.
That was the world record fee that still hasn't been broken. But of course, they're not entering the Super League, and they're not one of the clubs that are in massive amount of debt trying to find a scapegoat through everyone else.
Yeah.
Quote marks, they weren't invited, by the way.
Oh yeah.
It's bollocks, in my opinion, mate. Surely, if you're forming a Super League, you're going to get for last season's finalist of the competition you're trying to rival involved. So it's
Well, the
bollocks
thing
that
is,
they didn't invite him, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, I
well,
agree.
this was quite clearly a money making scheme, wasn't it? It was.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't.
100%.
It wasn't the six. Yeah, it wasn't the best clubs in the world, but it was the richest. That's why you had people like Arsenal and Spurs being invited.
Exactly.
Because silverware-wise, they haven't won as much, but they've got a lot of money. Paris Saint-Germain have clearly got a lot of money. the German league, okay, you can kind of understand if they said that they weren't invited because a system's been in place, which made it clear straight from the beginning of all this that they wouldn't be joining because the system didn't allow them to. But to turn for the people in the Super League to say, "Oh, we didn't want Paris Saint-Germain," is an absolute load of rubbish in what has just been a long series of complete and utter bollocks throughout this entire fiasco, essentially.
In good news, the league has been officially suspended because of the backlash.
Thank fuck for that.
Oh, is this really recent news, or is this?
I mean, I don't.
Is this breaking news, Charlie?
Well, I can't
Maybe
say
this
it
morning.
is.
I think I saw the same
I
thing
mean,
about this.
Check your sources.
The article's from an hour ago, and it just says that it's been suspended, but like it's not like a headline. It's just like a little.
Thought we had a Charlie Schultz exclusive then.
In other football Twitter news, Milan lost against Sassuolo today. Juventus are losing against Parma, or probably lost because this was like an oldest tweet. This was like 2 hours ago.
We
Wait,
drew.
how far
City
into
were
the
losing.
City game
Yep.
are we?
Oh yeah,
Probably
what is the
80 minutes. It's probably still winning. They were 2-1 up.
87 something.
Oh fuck, man! I wanted to lose. I wanted to
88
take their
minutes
revenge.
and they're winning. Interesting.
Yeah. Both sides have been knocked down to 10 men.
Ooh, interesting.
Matty
Who
Cash.
got sent off to Villa?
Matty Cash.
Oh,
Yeah.
Ooh.
So Stones has been
Bit
sent
annoyed
off for
about John
City,
Stones.
Cash for Villa, and then Foden and Hernandez
So
have scored, and then McGinn has scored.
Rodri, McGinn.
McGinn, yeah.
it's ironic that a player called Cash has been sent off, considering everything that's happened so far.
Cash sent off against City, against the Super League. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, we don't want Cash.
Ooh, controversial. On Stone sending off. Exact same, they reckon, as Lee and Cooper when they played them last. Leeds and City, so a bit of controversy there as well.
Yeah, I'm quite annoyed about it because I've got him in my fantasy side, so he's cost me 2 points.
Yeah.
Apparently,
What
it's
a shame.
potentially his first ever Prem red card, which means apparently that then means because it's the first ever Prem red card for John Stones, it means City are guaranteed to win their first ever Champions League because it's their first ever, by the way.
Oh,
God's sake.
fuck you.
I got an interesting article here, actually.
Mhm.
Chelsea owner Roman Abramovich is furious after being blindsided by the fierce criticism that greeted the Super League plans, as Russian now has concerns for his legacy and reputation despite backing out of the controversial breakaway competition. So he's furious at the backlash. So the concerns for his legacy and reputation.
Backlash is what it sounds like.
Yeah.
Not necessarily furious at the backlash. He's furious at what caused it.
I mean, the headline just says that he's furious
Backlash is expected
after
to be
being
fair.
blindsided by the backlash, and he has concerns for his legacy and reputation.
Yes,
even though he pulled out.
It doesn't say because of it.
So what's your thoughts on that?
For a reason.
It says am I right in saying that the exact wording was he's furious at the backlash? Is that the exact wording?
After.
So he's furious after being quote unquote blindsided by the fierce criticism that greeted the Super League plans.
Right. Okay.
So he's not furious at the backlash. He's furious at what's caused it, is what it sounds like. Which backs up further that he wasn't an advocate for it. He's furious at...
No, but I think he's still right to be fearful for his reputation and legacy because he did still have a part to play in it.
Be honest,
you know, as mentioned earlier.
Chelsea fans will still love him at the end of the day, in my opinion.
They probably will, yeah. And you know, if that's what the fans view him, then you know, fair enough. You know, as has been proven over the last couple of days, who is anyone to argue with the fans? But you know, like I said, I think him and every other owner of every other club involved in this has had their part to play because they would have had to have, for whatever their motivation, they would have had to have signed off on it and given the green light for their clubs to do this. So,
Final
you know,
say.
it's yeah, they've all got their varying levels of responsibility in what's happened. You know, and if his legacy isn't tarnished at Chelsea, which, you know, it may not do, I certainly think amongst wider football fans, a lot less will be thought of him than was before. I
To be
certainly
fair,
think.
he was just called an oil money merchant anyway, so it makes no sense what rivals think anyway.
True.
Oh yeah, everyone else hated him beforehand, so they just hate him even more now.
There.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It makes no difference. As long as the Chelsea fans remain loving him, then it doesn't make any difference to him, in my opinion.
I
Yeah.
certainly think a lot less of him now, and I was one of these people that I didn't really don't get me wrong, I wasn't particularly happy about it, but you know, he was essentially someone who came in, invested money in a club, which is his right as an owner, and brought success. Now, obviously, I don't have that at West Ham because we support West Ham, but that's fair enough if he's going to do that. but obviously now that he's come out and done this, you know, it's
Swings and roundabouts.
yeah, it has been a real kick in the teeth for wider football.
Yeah. It's a shame,
JP
really.
Morgan given lower sustainability rating after funding the failed league.
As he should be.
That's amazing.
Well, yeah,
Of
of course, because they've essentially invested large sums of money on something,
Into something that
that's
didn't happen.
collapsed.
Yeah.
Essentially, that's like you and sort of buying shares in in British Airways just before COVID struck. Of course, you're going to lose a load of money.
Yeah.
Of course, your sustainability is going to fall
I'm
because
telling you, people's bank accounts who invested into Zoom went right up, and then British Airways went right down.
Oh yeah.
what they should have done
it
was
shat
got that
itself.
£4 billion or so and invested it in toilet roll companies.
Brilliant.
That's what they should have done.
Yeah.
It's
their money back.
hugely smart manoeuvre.
Rather than investing in something that was doomed from the start.
It's a shame.
27
It's a
minutes
shame.
ago. Updated 45 minutes ago. The headline is European Super League. White failed and will clubs try again?
Oh fuck! Right after they do, I'll fucking kick him out. A lot of them.
So we
You
have.
big up the
Yeah.
Millwall fan.
I'll brick them all. I do not care. I'll grab my bricks.
Chris will
I'll
start
literally.
World War 3 if he needs to.
Listen, fam. I will
that's
tear down
already
my fucking house as for ammunition.
Your house is
And I'll just
dying
lob 'em
according to the last episode anyway.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. I know. I might as well just take all the bricks down and make it faster. Yeah. What I'm gonna do? Lob them at every single owner of every shitty club that fucking tries to go.
Okay. Be careful of what you say here.
Why?
I mean, he's already
I-
threatened to lob bricks at them. It makes no difference, does it?
We do not condone
Exactly.
violence. These are all empty threats.
I don't
No, I
condone violence,
condone
and these are
violence.
empty threats. I don't condone violence, and these are empty threats because I don't want to break my house.
Would you want to
Well,
break
that's the
them though?
reason.
Yeah, no,
Well,
of
no,
course.
no,
Yeah,
no, no,
just
not-
because he
not-
wants it to happen doesn't mean he
Not
will.
physically, but I'd like to have a strongly worded protest or strongly worded conversation / debate with them.
Have a
About it.
discussion.
Execution.
Sit down and have a
Have a-
nice chat.
Have a strongly worded discussion over a cup of tea.
Them doing the
But
most
this is
British way.
But this is the thing, and this was what caused a lot of fear in the first place, was that these people were avoiding these conversations, and it's, to be honest, now it's still not completely clear as to exactly what role individuals had to play and who was and wasn't involved and to what extent.
Mhm.
And that is what has fueled a lot of people's fears, because obviously if you don't know what's happening, your mind assumes the worst and thinks that there is a huge amount of strength behind it. And that's where a lot of this fear has come from, and how, it's taken. It seems funny for me to say so long, but why it took 2 or 3 days after mass backlash for them to back down rather than straight away.
Yeah.
Right,
Touching on the
I thought of a better way to get through to them. A diss track.
Oh, for
Charlie?
fuck's sake, no, not happening.
European Super League diss track.
Knowledge. European Super League.
No,
What
no,
a
you fucked it.
I don't
Get
know.
out. Get out of the call. I'm a host
Fuck
this
off.
now.
No, fuck off.
It's now the Prod Bushcast.
The Bushcast.
The Bushcast.
You need John
Yeah.
Barnes
Do it
dressing up again
specifically
and rapping,
bushes.
don't you?
Yeah.
Were
European
you gonna
Super
say?
League is
Were you gonna
shit.
say something, Taylor?
Oh yeah,
Before?
I was saying the will it happen again bit. Considering the Premier League had however many teams break off and for the Prem, and now the Super League has come out and done the exact same thing pretty much with the teams breaking out. Surely, if they don't put what's the word? Restrictions
Preventative
in,
measures.
yeah,
Yeah.
and this is almost guaranteed to happen again.
Yeah,
Also,
it won't
bearing in-
put 'em
bearing in
off,
mind-
but it'll change how they do it.
Yeah. Bearing in mind though, with the Premier League, it was an open competition, unlike the European Super League.
Hmm.
I think the difference with the formation of the Premier League in comparison to the attempted formation of the Super League was there was more of a split. There was more of a divide with the Premier League for reasons we've mentioned, like it was an open competition. So you didn't
Yeah.
have such strength and one-sided opinion going towards it. Obviously, pretty much everyone has been against the Super League, and it's almost guaranteed that governments and governing bodies will, at the very least, attempt to introduce measures to prevent further issues like this happening in the future. So
Yeah.
it's almost undeniable that it will be more difficult, not necessarily impossible, but a lot more difficult for people to try and essentially orchestrate a repeat of what we've seen over the past couple of days. Which, in my opinion, can only be a good thing.
It'd be
Yeah.
one of the rare occasions where me and Boris could agree on something.
Well, and that was,
Yeah,
one
that's
of the strong things. This is one of the few things that I've ever seen in my lifetime where every single political party has been unanimous in their
unified.
response. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like
You
Boris
know.
certainly saved a lot of his rep with that.
Possibly.
With the
Can I-
pandemic and everything, there's going to be his rep will have gone down with his decisions or whatever, but that would have that would have upped it by an amount.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Can
think
I read out some
yeah.
quotes, and I want to hear what people have to say about them, by the way.
Yeah, go on.
A
Ask
couple
away.
of quotes from Perez and Klopp and Guardiola and all that.
Oh, these are going to be
So-
awful.
Klopp,
This is gonna be a fun one.
the day before Liverpool's game, I've forgotten who they played now, but they drew 1-1 in the end.
Leeds, wasn't
Klopp,
it?
before the game, said, "I don't think the Super League is a good idea, no." So what are your guys' opinions on Klopp and Guardiola both speaking out of managers of clubs who were both looking to take part?
They deserve all the praise they get.
Statement.
Yeah, good. Yeah, they're setting an example, and then if they were, obviously they wouldn't want to walk because they had their jobs on the line. But if they did, it would have set an even bigger. Like it would have hammered home the
Yeah.
message of
Yeah, they could
We
have
don't
also,
support
they
this.
could even have been sacked in the end as well.
That
yeah.
was
Disagreeing and speaking up against the board. Yeah,
And
well,
look-
they were saying Mourinho was, but it's still unconfirmed because there were a lot of rumours before saying they were they were unhappy with him anyway.
Well, I think even if that is true, I still give more credit to people like Klopp and Guardiola because they've spoken out about it publicly. And even after, if this is true, even after Mourinho's been sacked, he still hasn't made any public comment on it, which makes me think that actually that wasn't the case. You've seen Thomas Tuchel at Chelsea. He's obviously had a pre-match conference, and in fairness to him, I think him, like a lot of managers, were in the dark, so he wasn't as explicit with any kind of protest.
Yeah, he didn't give anything away, and he was just kind of playing it safe, kind of thing.
He was very neutral in his response, which
didn't say anything either way.
Fair enough.
Yes,
Ricky,
so
but-
yes,
smart.
yeah. So I don't quite hold him in such high accolade as the other two managers we've mentioned, but then you can't really have a go. Of course, there's Mikel Arteta at Arsenal now. His side obviously didn't play any games over these past couple of days, so he hasn't been given that platform to express his views or establish his opinion in this. So
it's huge for players like Milner and Henderson. Pretty much both of them are Liverpool's captains. Both of them spoke out against it before and after the game, despite going to take part in it, supposedly.
And both of them, I think, both on and off the pitch, are two of, if not the two, most respected players in the league.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Especially Henderson. It's always him taking part in this, isn't it?
yeah. You know, and I think
Always.
Milner's. They're both. Yeah, they're both seen as having very professional attitudes towards the game, and having sort of very strong moral standpoints. So when they speak out against something like this, you know that it must clearly be quite a big issue.
Those like the captain's captain, like the Prem's captains, like you said, if he speaks out on it, then I think he's wrong.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, all right. How about these quotes? Then I agree. Not with the quote with you guys is what I meant. Sorry. Football is going through a very tough situation, and the Super League will save clubs financially.
I think the tough situation is a bit of an understatement, to be honest. Puts it quite lightly.
Clubs.
It's I mean, in fairness, they didn't say it would save every club financially. I think it certainly would have saved the clubs involved or who'd signed up to it financially.
Oh yeah. I mean,
well, I don't think it would have saved them. I think it's only the Madrid, and it was Madrid arranging it, and
they
it was
should have
them
called
who
it
were in the most debt. So
they
it's
should have just called it the
themselves.
fucking. They should have just called it the Money League. Let's be honest. I mean, that's what it's fucking built
They
on, isn't it?
basically
Billionaire
did with
League.
naming it Super.
Yeah,
it
the
was
billionaire club. Billionaires club.
Billionaire boys
And
club.
to be fair, that's basically what all
Yeah, like
football clubs
fuck off,
are
innit?
anyway.
Literally, like created by the
billionaires.
poor, stolen by the rich. Fucking joke.
Yes.
Yep.
Definitely.
Yeah,
I
that's
need to
exactly
stop
what it
being so
was.
aggressive.
Passionate.
I apologise for my aggressive Millwall behaviour.
That's expected.
What can you expect from a Millwall fan?
Yeah, here we go from Perez. Top clubs
Very
in
passionate.
Spain and England are coming to conclusions about fixing football. Madrid alone lost 400 million this season.
Because
Nothing
they're
is being done
stupid.
about it.
Because
Here
they're
at
fucking
Madrid, we lost a
stupid.
lot of money and we are in a very bad situation.
But most of that's their own fault.
After spending
Fucking
200 million on a 30-year-old Hazard.
Yeah, exactly. Fucking
That's
fix
what I
it and
saw.
stop fucking scapegoating everybody else then.
Well, this is the thing.
Idiots.
I mean, don't get me wrong. A lot of clubs, as well as many other industries, have been hit hard by COVID. But there has just been not only a complete lack of success, but a complete lack of effort to adapt financially. So
And brain power.
Yeah, so they are completely, or almost completely, the architects of their own downfall. Because as I mentioned earlier, with any other industry, when the losses are sort of becoming lower and there's less income coming in, you cut your spending and you
They're
save
inept.
money. Yeah, you bring in austerity measures in order to reduce the impact of debt.
They're slack. They're useless. They're absolutely pathetic. Like it's an absolute shambles and a disgrace. Like to say that when you can't even fix your own problems at home. Like sort yourselves out, lads.
Yeah,
you've got board of staff. Use their brains. And think of a fucking way to fix it. It's just...
I don't think it's stupidity that's led to it. I think it is.
But...
I think it is greed. I think had they put their minds to it, they could have found ways out of it.
I'm definitely being harsh on it, but that's just I'm a harsh person, so.
Well, no, I don't think you are being harsh on it because like you said, I think they've got the means and the intelligence to sort the problems out in what most of us would view as a more legitimate way. But instead, they've essentially decided to reduce the losses and do what is profitable for them without any regard of how it would affect other people.
Yeah.
It is greed.
Capitalism.
Plain and simple.
So I should go back to communism.
He says football has to evolve, claiming this is the next step.
No, it
this
doesn't.
is the evolution of football. This is how it progresses and how it will be long term.
The game's perfect as it is, in my opinion. I would not change football in my life.
He is right that sort of, as times and circumstances changes, things do have to evolve. But in the
right now, no.
For example, they always change every season.
But what he's proposed isn't evolution. It's evolution for Real Madrid and their bank account, but it's not evolution for the game of football. Because as many people have agreed, it would be the first step in a total regression in the game.
Mm.
And
I feel like James
for.
is I feel like James is a good cop, and I'm back up right now, just slacing everywhere, left, right, and centre.
Well, yeah. I mean, you say that. I think I'm not. I'm probably a bit less harsh in the language I'm
Yeah.
using, but we're essentially making the same point.
Yeah, it's just you have a very calm view about it, unlike me, who's just absolutely going off on one about it.
Well,
But I'm quite passionate about it.
Well, the thing
of
is,
young people aren't interested in football.
That's ridiculous.
That's what he says.
Clearly just
Tosh.
using it to back his points.
What a load of tosh.
Where's he got the? Where does he reckon he's got this statistic from?
Just
He's not
pulled
said,
out
but
thin
probably
air.
he's just made it up, innit?
Yeah,
Ridiculous.
he's got no evidence or
Mhm.
anything to back up that claim.
Here's one. This says no statistic. This is just a definite quote. He just goes, 16 to 24-year-old fans aren't interested in football.
Well,
See,
There's
it's
no
that one for
number,
me that's
there's
the
no
most
minority,
mad.
there's no majority. It's just, they're just not.
Because that's the most mad to me, because there's literally data to directly contradict that.
Yeah, in the same press conference, he said it has over 4 billion fans.
That one I
That's a good
believe.
point.
So it's like,
That one I
why are you
believe.
contradicting yourself?
yeah,
Yeah,
that's
he was right about a lot
That's
in
a
the
good
press
point.
conference. He was speaking out on UEFA a lot, and he was spot on with pretty much everything he said against them as well. And he's right about other things in it as well. But then there's so much else where it's just contradicting himself non-stop.
Yep.
Mm.
Could have actually made a claim himself, but painted himself in a good light. But
It's
Here's one.
balmy.
He
It's
said
going
it has
mad.
over 4 billion fans, and then goes on to say, we have to change something to make this sport more attractive at a global level. Well, if it's got over 4 billion fans, then it's already attractive to a global level.
Wait, actually,
Yeah.
how much of the world is that as a percentage?
That's just over half.
yeah,
They say,
Oh,
what,
yeah.
7 billion?
So
Isn't it?
About
they
so-
reckon, they reckon there's
now.
just over 7 billion people in the world, pushing on for 8 billion. To 4
So it's like
billion.
60%. It's like in between 60 and 50%.
It's somewhere between 50 and 60. Yeah.
That's
I don't
Well,
know
here's
the
one
exact
that'll probably
mathematics.
get you, because it could then be, you could then try and relate it to rice, James.
Okay.
If we have more money, it will be better for everyone, because we will be able to sign players from smaller clubs for a lot of money and help them too.
But they can already
Money,
do that.
money. Yeah.
They
So it's
can
helping, so it's basically you put 100 million price tag on Rice, we can then afford to buy him, we buy him for 100 million, and that then helps you.
But that's
The
ridiculous.
most expensive defender is literally from a bigger team to a, I don't want to say lesser, but quite literally is.
But that's how
comparison.
football. But that's how football's been working for generations. The richer
Mhm.
clubs can afford to buy the best players. That's why That's why clubs that invest more money tend to do better, because they buy the better players.
But he's saying it's better for the smaller
No.
clubs as well.
But that's ridiculous. That's essentially saying, let's take.
He's
I don't know.
starting a Bayern-esque domination.
Yeah, that's essentially what it is. Let's use Man United and West Ham for example. That's essentially like turning around and saying, well, we're planning on changing the game because Man United are going to buy people like Rio Ferdinand. And this is a whole new idea that's revolutionised the sport. No, it's not. This is exactly what's been happening for as long as football's been around. It's actually, he's basically just reiterating what clubs do when they are in financial trouble, which is probably what his own club should have done when they were in financial trouble.
Exactly.
only you
Another
could read your own
Players
advice.
reinvest.
Yeah.
They loaned off Bale to Tottenham, and apparently they're paying 100% of his wages.
Oh yeah.
Well, yeah, because they're trying to get rid of him.
Another reason grassroots football is so important, and this will really hinder it.
Yeah.
This will
For
be
sure.
better for all clubs, not just the elite. All I do is for the good of football.
It's
Yeah,
that last
you're
line.
right.
It's that last line.
You're kind of waffling there, mate.
It's painful.
Paint
It is
himself in
painful
such
to
a good
hear.
light, but he can make himself like the savior if he said the right things. But
Oh, it's
he
same
could have
Perez
been
himself.
so good, but they just screwed it over so bad.
Yeah. It's big Saint Perez himself come to save us
Big man
and our
Perez.
football. Saint Perez, praise our Lord.
So they say 15 teams are fixed in it. 100% can't get knocked out, can't get relegated, nothing can happen, kind of thing.
Ow.
The other 5 teams they have to earn their spot. So he's turned around and said, the Super League is not a closed league.
What?
The Super
Oh,
League is
solid.
not a closed league. That's totally false. It's an open
you
league
dumb?
that any good team can reach, regardless of the name. The Super League is like the Champions League.
Oh, I never heard something so stupid in my life.
The reforms of the Champions League that's going on then.
Oh,
Well,
I've
that
never
was
heard
another-
something so stupid.
Well, that was another kick in the teeth as well, wasn't it? Because UEFA
Yeah.
had essentially made concessions and agreed to this new Champions League format, hadn't they?
Mhm.
They basically said, "Okay, we're not particularly happy with this, but we'll make the compromise." And then
Mm.
I think it was the same day, just a matter of hours later, they came out with all this Super League stuff.
Mm.
Yeah,
it's
no, I don't
ridiculous.
know how reliable it is, so don't quote me 100% and take it as gospel or whatever. But they claimed as well, not clubs, but like certain journalists and papers and all that. They say part of the reason all this Super League was they never wanted it or planned for it to go ahead successfully. It was just made
Yeah.
because it was made to kind of pressure UEFA to change their change.
I think that's complete and utter rubbish. I think if that was the case, they wouldn't have gone this far with it, and they wouldn't have put their clubs at such huge risk.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what UEFA said. He said it was a terrible negotiation tactic, is what he said.
I think, if anything, now that they've sort of demonstrated just how much strength the fans have, which in fairness, I think us as fans didn't realise we had until a couple of days ago.
Mm.
I think if anything, these clubs are now in a weaker position to negotiate that because it's reflected horrifically on them.
Could say stronger though as well, because it means fans can now argue against UEFA as well. Hopefully the fans can then do the exact same as what we did against the clubs towards UEFA. I mean, I don't know where you'd protest against, because there's not exactly a stadium, is there, for UEFA? But if these Champions League reforms are just as bad, which they seemingly are, then hopefully fans can do something about it, just as they did for the Super League.
Yeah, quite possibly. I think it would be a bit more difficult to protest against UEFA if they made a decision they didn't like. Just in the sense that, the reason the fans have had such a strong voice in this is because of the sheer extremities in such a short period of time that these clubs have proposed. I think unless UEFA respond with something similar with such a horrific idea, it's going to be very difficult to get that sheer amount of manpower and resources behind it. That's not necessarily to say that's right or wrong. I just think practically, I think this is the only time we're ever going to see anything like this in our lifetime.
Well, I hope so.
Fan-wise, I would be very surprised if we see such a large, basically the entirety of the football community uniting in such complete and utter solidarity against one thing. I don't think, you look throughout the history of football, this has never happened before.
No.
I'd be very surprised if it did happen again, certainly within our lifetime.
And if they bring in restrictions too, then it make it even more trickier.
Well, if they do bring in these restrictions and change the look, we're probably reducing the chances of motivation for this kind of thing happening again.
I'll have a quick update.
Yeah,
Man
sure.
City have won the game. That's all.
Oh, fuck's sake! Oh.
That's all you can go back to what you were saying, James.
Yeah.
Sorry. Sick.
Yeah, not surprised. Yeah. Okay, now listen to the confidence Perez is saying here as well. Our players will not be banned from the World Cup. I can guarantee it. They can be 100% certain of it. Kicking us out of this season's Champions League? Absolutely not. I guarantee it at 100%.
But he couldn't go, and that's what led to a lot of
Yeah.
mistrust because it was made obvious, no matter, even when it was looking
Mhm.
like the Super League could go ahead, he couldn't guarantee that. That was
Mhm.
obvious. He had no leverage whatsoever, or no way of demonstrating that he could make those promises.
I'm just trying to think of someone who's like talked more bollocks than I've ever heard than this man in like that one sentence, but I can't think of anyone genuinely. Like there's Boris who's talked a lot of shit, but even this is a new level of bollocks.
Charlie
Mhm.
Stewart when we were at school.
No, even Charlie wasn't that bad. Even Charlie wasn't that bad. There was no way. This is impossibly like feasibly like bullshit in every single way possible. So,
Yeah. They were just so.
Said the same about domestic leagues as well.
oh god.
Oh,
Yeah.
right, yeah.
They were just so disconnected with reality. It was. It was almost laughable. If it wasn't so scary, it was almost laughable.
Mhm.
Mm.
You know how he could genuinely believe this.
Literally. It's
So we have here, what do the clubs think now? Speaking on BBC Radio 5 Live, Crystal Palace chairman Steve Parish said it has removed the biggest cloud hanging over football for the past 10 years. We have lived under the constant threat that this will happen, and it has caused immeasurable damage already. We need massive reform at UEFA. These guys have infiltrated the top of our sport and they have had too much influence. UEFA should be running European football for the benefit of the game. The champions of the Netherlands, Belgium, and Poland have to qualify in the summer for the rights to set up to get to the group stages. While still on the table is a proposal that a team finishing 7th in the Premier League may still be able to leapfrog on Aston Villa or a Leicester in 5th and play ahead of them. Still, this is a long statement. Still on the table today is a 30% distribution of money based on their history in favour of these guys. We are sick of hearing about preferential votes, about preferential distribution of money and of preferential qualification. Of course, there's a way back. We need to solve the disconnect. The fans have made it clear we must separate the people from the great clubs we are proud to have in our league. These are the big flag carriers in our league, and of course we want them back on side. There'll be a healing process. It is one club, one vote. Nobody is bigger than the game. We need to have a big moment where we sit down and never see anything like this again. Nobody really in this industry wants government involvement, but that's where we find ourselves. We need to accept we need to get our house in order if we don't want that to happen. I do think this is a one-off and that we will look back and think this is an incredibly positive day for the game and we love, and for the dream of every supporter to continue to be alive. This is a moment for a massive catalyst for change. The battle is won, but the war is yet to be won.
Ow.
That was a long statement.
I think he made some very good
Facts.
points.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, he has essentially just been echoing what we've all been saying since this thing came out. But you know, there's nothing in there that, I mean, maybe when I read over it again, I might find something. But hearing that, there's nothing that initially stands out that I've got any objections to. You know, these people have essentially, they've abused their power. That's what they've done. It's a direct abuse of power.
He actually offers a solution with the one vote, one club thing, or whatever you mentioned.
Yeah.
That is a good idea.
Yeah, of course it is. One vote for one club. That's what we've got in the Premier League at the moment. And when people came out with this project Big Picture, where they were thinking of basically giving a bigger slice of the cake to the so-called top 6 clubs, people were out in uproar. You know, up until now, it's a system that's worked, and it's only now that we've had these clubs trying to break away that we've started thinking of introducing an independent regulating body, which I would presume would still be there in the form of UEFA if this was to happen on a larger scale. One would assume, obviously, we don't know the ins and outs of it, or if anything will go ahead. But it's
Good
what
idea,
we'd like to
Justin.
see, probably.
Mm-hmm. I think he mentioned some action as well. People involved, or have I just made that up?
I think
Yeah,
he
he did.
mentioned UEFA, yeah, about UEFA action or something.
Well, I'm guessing this is at the 14 other clubs meeting. I don't know though, but they did have another meeting where they, Richard Masters was saying to take the people out involved in the game, remove them from Premier League committees or something like that. I'm not
He-
sure
he-
of the article, but
He basically asked these people, sort of like the chief executives and stuff involved. He asked them to step down from their roles, and one of them, and one of them whose identity hasn't been disclosed was completely outraged by this idea, absolutely hated him, and essentially the word is he's basically asking them to jump before they're pushed. Is what's happening. So it's looking like if he gets his way, they're gonna go either way. But it's whether they voluntarily go or if things get even more ugly than they already have.
And they'll just have to force them out.
Essentially, yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. And I think it would
But
be
it's good to hear.
And this is the thing, I mean, I can't. I mean, obviously, we don't know exactly who it is, so we don't know the circumstances, but it's quite a surprise to think that even after all this, they're still outraged that they've been at the suggestion of leaving. It's.
Oh, yeah.
Perez actually said that if he didn't do the Super League, football would have been dead in 2024. What do you think of that?
That was one of the quotes.
Bollocks.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
I mean, he's seen the
No, that's
Champions
one of the
League.
quotes I was gonna read.
Fans, surely.
Has he seen English culture?
Yeah,
Bark up the wrong tree, mate.
So dumb.
Have you seen Sunday League? Hello?
Mm-hmm.
VAR will improve, referees will improve, there'll be financial fair play and clubs will improve. We want football to go on for another 100 years.
Yeah, no, that was spot on what he was saying there, I think, because some of the things he did suggest, like microphones on referees and some of the VAR changes, I do think they would have benefited football.
Yeah.
But it's the competition they're happening in which is damaging it. So it's like, this is good. So it's like a tiny bit of good in a terrible thing. So it means nothing. It's like...
He's probably not too far off in what he was saying when, if we didn't make changes, football would be dead by 2024. When, okay, maybe that's a bit of an exaggeration, but if you look at it, the way football is currently being run in the build-up to this, he probably wasn't wrong, but what he suggested is a completely ridiculous solution, which is absolutely mental. It basically just goes back to what we were saying earlier about how he ran the finances of the club very poorly, ran him up into a loss of debt, and instead of dealing with it properly, he suggested a completely ludicrous proposal to sort out the money problem. That's what we're seeing here. He's not wrong in what he's saying. He's just completely deluded in how he plans to fix it.
Yeah, he said he was doing it to save football at quote unquote this critical moment.
By causing an even more critical moment.
Fight fire with fire, you know what they say?
Well,
the Champions League is attractive only from the quarterfinals. Nobody cares about the games before.
This is why they're going to add 100 games to the already existing Champions League.
That's not really true either, is it? Because, with a league, the longer it goes on for, the clearer picture people have got of how it's going to finish. Now, that's not necessarily to say that a league's boring, but if you've got a league of 20 teams, you get halfway through it, and half the time you can tell who's going to win. If you've got a group stage of 4, you could still essentially, in theory, quite realistically, come up to the last day of the group stage without knowing who's going to finish, who's going to qualify, and who's not.
Just
You
like a title race.
Yeah, so this is quite obviously just another one of these sort of things that he's come out with in order to try and make his ideas and schemes look better, so that people try and back it. And he's completely underestimated the intelligence of the football fan, because everyone's completely seen through it, and that's why you've got people standing outside places like Stamford Bridge and Ellen Road and the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, basically losing their nut with rage. Because along with a load of other things, people feel patronised by it.
Be insulted.
They're not idiots. Well, the ones outside Tottenham are, because they support Tottenham, but the rest of them, they're not idiots.
So do you think if they did this a different way, then the Super League would have worked, and they could have coexisted with other tournaments?
It could, as a Champions League rival, which is what it was made to be. If it was done right and it wasn't so exclusive, it could have been a halfway decent competition.
I think it still would have been very difficult to do, though, for the same fears they were saying earlier of because this is essentially an entire league. You're doubling people's games. I think it would have been very difficult to get over this fear of, well, if you've got a game, against Burnley and a game against Real Madrid within the same week, who are you going to field your strongest team against? It's going to be Real Madrid. And you're essentially sort of, you're basically, the Premier League will basically be a watered down version of what it is, and the same goes for the other leagues involved. It is going to have an impact on the quality of these leagues, which again then affect the money coming into it, which is essentially what a lot of this has been about. So I don't think it would have been as much of a disaster as it has been, but I still think it would be quite difficult to persuade people to get on board with it. Especially when, despite what Perez has said, I think a lot of people are happy with the way things work currently and still get a lot of entertainment value out of it.
Yeah, I think the Champions League is good how it is. There's no need for these reforms, and there's no need for a whole new league either.
Exactly, and I think a lot of fans have the same attitude as you do, Sam, in the sense that, if it's not broken, don't fix it.
Yeah, I feel like they're just overthinking it too much when, sometimes simplicity is key,
Yeah, if you don't see any problems, don't start changing things.
So it's all good to try and improve. It's all good to try and improve it as they do each season with, say, like the Prem. Try and add a couple of things, improve it, slightly change it. But to completely redo it, there's no need.
But even then, those things that have been introduced, most of the time are only because there's an out-and-out problem with it. I mean, you look at goal line technology. Well, a huge sort of advocate for that was in the 2010 World Cup when Frank Lampard had that goal ruled out against Germany. You look at VAR, the officiating in this country was, and arguably still is, absolutely diabolical. So there were sort of glaring problems that needed to be fixed, hence why these things were introduced into the game. What Perez has done, he's got what is already a very popular format and tried to change it, and it's very difficult for him to try and convince us that it's for the wider good of the game and not just a money-making scheme to bail himself out of this hole he's dug. Which is essentially what it is.
Right,
Otherwise, he wouldn't have done it.
So we've only got so much of James's time, and obviously I appreciate every second he's given to this episode. And we are literally just about to hit an hour and a half. So does anyone have any last things they'd like to say on the league?
Fuck Perez.
Other than fuck Perez.
Super League and
I
fuck
think we all
Perez.
think that right now.
I don't think so though.
I think we've
We
pretty much
covered
gone
so
over all that we
much.
wanted to.
Yeah.
Pretty much. I just think, this has given a lot of food for thought of how we go forward. And I think it would be very exciting to see, or very interesting at least, to see what the long-term effects of this are.
I'm
Yeah.
interested in that.
So
You know, who knows?
go on.
I was going to say, you know, who knows where we're going to be in 6 months, a year's time, or whatever
Yeah.
after this.
Fair. Can I just say as well? Paris has arrived for an interview on the Super League breakdown,
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
God.
and that will be starting in 20 minutes.
Okay, well,
Fantastic.
we can't.
So
We can't.
yesterday.
We can't continue the podcast for that
No,
long.
but it could be another little.
Could be a little, like, extension or something,
interesting
yeah.
little addition or a second
Yeah.
part or whatever.
Yeah.
That'll certainly be interesting to talk about. Whatever
So
it is.
Yeah,
me
I wonder what you
personally-
think.
Me personally, I think if they did it a different way and if they did it properly, it could have coexisted to an extent and it could have worked. But I think that the way that they did it, it fucked it, and it would have effectively killed football in a way. What do you think, Sam? Do you think the same? Like, would the Super League have effectively killed football the way that it was done?
It would have killed the roots of it. I don't think it would have killed football, because these clubs still would be getting a shitload of money, and they'd still be, at the end of the day, fans aren't going to leave their clubs and stop watching them. So I wouldn't say killed, but it would have certainly killed other clubs.
Taylor,
Definitely the lesser clubs.
Chris,
Your clubs. Sure, but
is Chris even here?
eating?
Right. Well then,
Well,
save the
James?
best for last. James, do you think it would have effectively killed football?
I think the end result probably would have been the same. I just think, you know, it probably would have lasted a bit longer and would have been shut down so quickly had they presented it in a different light. But the same thing would have happened, in my opinion, at some point or other.
Yeah, it wouldn't have gone down well.
Well, unfortunately, we can't get an opinion from Chris on this, but we'll have to make do, I guess. I think that's going to wrap up this episode. James, I, of course, appreciate you coming on, considering that you weren't on last episode or anything. And you've obviously got
thank
a
you.
job and everything.
Cheers,
Some of
yeah.
us. Yeah, that's good enough. So I'll say bye. Sam?
No,
Never
mate,
trust this
I'm
man
not.
to do it
Sorry.
properly. Taylor? That'll do. Chris is dead. And then James.
Say bye
cheers,
for
fellas. Thank you.
Alright, that'll be the end of it.
My name's Chris. I support a shit football club. Goodbye, everyone.
That'll do. That'll do. Right. Goodbye.